Hey there. So glad you found your way to my channel. Can't sleep tonight? Don't worry, I'm here with you. Let's spend this time together with some quiet stories, real ones from real people all around the world. If you enjoy what you hear, feel free to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to join our little midnight community. Now, let's begin our journey together.
In the early morning hours of December 12, 2020, the Purple People Bridge connecting Newport, Kentucky to downtown Cincinnati, Ohio, stood quiet under the winter sky. At approximately 3:30 a.m., a security guard was making his rounds when he noticed something unusual: a large, bulky bag placed near the bridge. Something about this bag troubled him, prompting him to approach and gently nudge it with his foot. The heavy object fell over with a thud, narrowly avoiding the water below. Upon closer inspection, the security guard realized this wasn't ordinary abandoned luggage. The bag had partially opened, revealing what appeared to be human remains. The security guard contacted emergency services immediately. In a voice tinged with disbelief, he explained to the 911 operator that he had discovered what appeared to be a body in a bag near the edge of the bridge. He expressed his shock at the situation, noting that in his nearly 60 years of life, he had never encountered anything like this before. Medical examiners later confirmed through autopsy that the woman had been stabbed multiple times and had been deceased for approximately 1 week. Near her body, investigators found a Paw Patrol blanket with bloodstains. As authorities worked to establish the woman's identity, another concerning situation was developing. Antonio Hughes had contacted police regarding his 3-year-old son, Nilo. Antonio explained that he hadn't seen Nilo since December 4th and had been unable to reach the child's mother. The mother was 29-year-old Nitisha Lattimore, and no one had heard from her since December 4th either. Investigators soon connected these seemingly separate cases. The woman found by the bridge was identified as Nitisha Lattimore. This discovery raised an immediate and troubling question. Where was 3-year-old Nilo? Family members described Nitisha as someone who was loyal and protective, always ready to offer advice to those who needed it. She had a vibrant personality that her aunt likened more to that of a sister than a niece. Nitisha was a devoted mother to 9-year-old Nico and 3-year-old Nilo. She and her youngest son shared an especially close bond with family members, often commenting on how they were like a charming little duo. Nilo would frequently ask to be picked up so he could hold his mother's face and give her kisses. Though Nitisha and Antonio were no longer together, they maintained an amicable relationship, and Antonio cherished every opportunity to spend time with his son. He described Nilo as somewhat shy, but incredibly sweet and caring. The little boy enjoyed Paw Patrol, playing with Hot Wheels toys and watching SpongeBob SquarePants with his father. Antonio once mentioned that while Nilo might initially be timid around strangers, once he became comfortable, his sweet nature would shine through, making him easy to love. As news of Nitisha's death and Nilo's disappearance spread throughout Cincinnati, the community mobilized quickly. Search efforts centered around the bridge and nearby river areas. Social media filled with messages using the hashtag #FindNilo, as residents offered assistance in any way possible. Chad Hagler, who lived in the same apartment building as Nitisha and Nilo, shared with local reporters how the situation had deeply affected him and his wife, causing them to lose sleep. He recalled how Nilo was always smiling and full of energy. a sweet child whose absence was deeply felt throughout the neighborhood. The search for Nilo intensified when investigators discovered the blood on the Paw Patrol blanket found with Nitasha matched that of the missing child. In another troubling development search, teams located a child's stroller floating in the Ohio River. It belonged to Nilo. While searching the area surrounding Nitasha's apartment, her aunt made a concerning discovery in the outdoor trash container shower curtains that appeared to have blood and tissue residue. Neighbors reported hearing screams on the evening of December 5th, and a resident living in the apartment below. Nitasha's had contacted building maintenance after noticing brownish-red water leaking through her ceiling. Police attention soon focused on 20-year-old Deshaun Brown, who had been in an on-again, off-again relationship with Nitasha. Deshaun had a prior criminal record, having been convicted of assault earlier in 2020, along with previous charges including obstruction of official business and falsification. As authorities continued searching for Nilo, they also sought to understand what might have motivated these tragic events. Information provided by one of Deshaun's acquaintances offered insight into a possible motive. Cincinnati police arrested Deshaun Brown on suspicion of murder. Initially, authorities were reserved about discussing the details that led to his arrest. However, they later revealed that based on Deshaun's conversations with others and his internet search history, they believed he had been planning to harm Nitasha and Nilo for at least 2 months. Investigators learned that Nitasha had become pregnant with Deshaun's child during the summer, but had experienced a miscarriage. Deshaun had expressed anger to friends believing Nitasha had intentionally terminated the pregnancy. He reportedly told others he wanted to retaliate against her and decided to target not only Nitasha, but also her son Nilo. Through careful analysis of security camera footage, phone records, internet search history, and witness statements, investigators constructed a timeline of events. On December 5th, Deshaun allegedly stabbed Nitasha to death in her apartment. Afterward, he used her phone to post a message on her Facebook account that read, "I love him forever, Deshaun Brown." He then concealed her body under the bed and left the apartment. The following day, Deshaun returned to take Nilo out in his stroller. He walked to the Ohio River and, according to evidence that would later be presented, placed the child into the water while still in his stroller. Sources indicated that Nilo was alive when this occurred, though authorities could not immediately disclose how they had obtained this information. For the next 5 days, Deshaun avoided returning to Nitasha's apartment. During this period, his internet search history showed queries for cleaning products, bridges in Cincinnati, and methods for removing blood stains. On December 11th, around 9:45 p.m., he purchased a body bag through an online retailer. Security footage from later that evening captured Deshaun carrying Nitasha's body, now enclosed in the body bag, through the hallway of her apartment building. He then used a rideshare service to transport himself and the bag to the river. The driver later stated that Deshaun had explained he was in the process of moving residences, though Deshaun apparently intended to dispose of Nitasha's remains in the water for unknown reasons. He ultimately left the bag on the riverbank. The Hamilton County Grand Jury returned an indictment against Deshaun Brown for the murders of Nitasha and Nilo Lattimore. The charges carried the potential for capital punishment. During a press conference, the district attorney praised the Cincinnati Police Department for their diligent work on the case and invited anyone who had previous interactions with Deshaun to come forward with information. Visibly affected by the case, The prosecutor explained that Deshaun appeared to have wanted to eliminate any connection between himself and Nilo after killing Nitisha. Rather than face the consequences of his actions against Nitisha, he allegedly chose to end Nilo's life as well, using what the prosecutor described as an incredibly brutal method. While the investigation had yielded sufficient evidence to support the charges, authorities continued searching for Nilo. Cincinnati police and volunteer groups conducted extensive searches covering more than 180 miles of the river. Their efforts incorporated dive teams, mounted patrols, canine units, and aerial surveillance. These searches were conducted simultaneously with the search for another missing child, 6-year-old James Hutchinson, adding to the emotional weight felt by the community and search teams. The search conditions were challenging. Despite its calm surface appearance, the Ohio River has powerful undercurrents and reaches depths of over 50 meters in some areas. After many days of searching, police officially changed their designation to a recovery mission, presuming that Nilo was deceased. Tracy Campbell, a member of one of the search and rescue teams, noted that their efforts had spanned 3 states, Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana, utilizing mounted units, drones, and water patrols. Throughout this period, Antonio maintained hope for his son's return. "I don't want to deal with not finding my son," he expressed softly during one interview. "I'll be at the river and just be thinking, will I ever get to bury my son?" He struggled to understand how this situation had unfolded, noting that Nitisha had trusted Deshaun even with her child, which made the betrayal all the more difficult to process. Antonio encouraged the community not to give up on the search for either Nilo or James Hutchinson, expressing that he and other affected families thought about their children daily and simply wanted to provide them with a proper burial, if nothing else. Deshaun Brown was formally charged with 2 counts of aggravated murder, tampering with evidence, and gross abuse of a corpse. He entered pleas of not guilty to all charges. During court appearances, he displayed argumentative behavior, prompting the judge to repeatedly request that he maintain composure and show respect for the proceedings. Christmas Day that year was marked by a gentle gathering near the bridge. Family and friends lit candles, placed a small Christmas tree, and left a large stuffed bear alongside a photograph of Nilo and Nitisha. Later on what would have been Nilo's 4th birthday, loved ones gathered to share cake, open gifts, and play with toys that had been his favorites. Deshaun's defense team pursued 2 potential strategies: either having him found not competent to stand trial, or, if he was deemed competent, having the death penalty removed as a sentencing option. They argued that he suffered from a severe mental illness at the time of the alleged offenses, specifically bipolar disorder, which they claimed had significantly impaired his capacity for rational judgment. Bipolar disorder is one of 4 conditions specified in Ohio law that can make an individual ineligible for capital punishment, along with schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, and delusional disorder. The prosecution's psychological evaluation presented a different conclusion, finding no evidence of significant disturbances in thought, mood orientation, perception, or memory. Hamilton County Prosecutor Joe Dieters emphasized his commitment to pursuing the death penalty, stating that in all his years as a prosecutor, he had never encountered such a cold-blooded act committed against an innocent woman and her young child. He affirmed that his office would continue searching for Nilo while simultaneously prosecuting Deshaun Brown to the fullest extent permitted by law. The judge ultimately sided with the prosecution, denying the motion to exclude capital punishment as a sentencing option and finding Deshaun competent to stand trial. Antonio Nilo's father attended court proceedings whenever possible. During one hearing, overcome with emotion, he approached Deshaun in the courtroom and had to be removed. He received a 7-day sentence for this action, which was later reduced to 3 days. More than 4 years have passed since the deaths of Natisha and Nilo. Due to numerous delays and mental health evaluations, Deshaun Brown's trial has yet to commence, though another date has been scheduled for early 2025. The prospect of recovering Nilo's remains seems increasingly unlikely, denying his family the opportunity to lay him to rest properly alongside his mother. As the seasons continue to change over the Ohio River, the memory of Natasha and Nilo remains present in the minds of Cincinnati residents. The Purple People Bridge stands as a silent witness to their story, while the waters below keep their secrets close. On a quiet Thursday morning in May of 2010, the small city of Guthrie, Oklahoma, was beginning its day like any other residents were slowly leaving their homes heading to work and school as the morning sun rose higher in the sky. The neighborhood around West Orbit Drive was particularly peaceful with its modest homes and familiar routines. That serenity was disrupted just before 8 in the morning when a distressed call came through to the emergency services. The voice on the other end of the line belonged to 15-year-old Kaylee Fryer, who was calling from her family home at 402 West Orbit Drive. "Number 1, everywhere. I can't go in there. There's blood. I haven't been around. My dad," she told the dispatcher, her voice trembling slightly as she explained that she had found her father unresponsive. Kaylee had discovered her father, 50-year-old Louis Fryer, in his bedroom. From her description, it appeared to be a home invasion with tragic consequences. When police arrived at the address, they were met with a somber scene that confirmed her account. The bedroom where Louis Fryer was found showed evidence of violence. Blood covered various surfaces: the walls, the floor, and the bed frame. Louis had been deceased for several hours by that point. The disarray of the room suggested there had been a struggle, and Louis's body showed defensive wounds primarily to his neck and back. Investigators noted that a knife was missing from the kitchen, likely the weapon used in the attack, adding to the evidence of a possible break-in. Louis's car was no longer in the driveway. The blankets were still partially wrapped around Louis, who had fallen to the floor. The pattern of bloodstains indicated he had likely been asleep when the attack began, unaware of the danger until it was too late. For the past 13 years, it had been just Louis Kaylee and her 18-year-old brother Keith living in the home Louis and his ex-wife Tricia had separated in 1997 as she struggled with substance dependency issues resulting in periods of incarceration. Louis had been granted full custody of the children, though he actively encouraged their relationship with their mother, allowing them to see her even more frequently than the court had mandated. He believed maintaining that connection was important for them. Keith often described his father as their constant, a dependable parent who put their needs first between caring for 2 teenage children. Louis worked as a designer for a picture framing company. He enjoyed sports and had been passionate about fishing since his youth. Friends consistently described him as genuine and good-natured with a wonderful sense of humor. At the scene, Kaylee sat in a police vehicle with detectives while crime scene technicians examined the house thoroughly. When asked if she could think of anyone who might want to harm her father, she responded with certainty. "Everybody likes my dad." According to Kaylee, nothing unusual had happened the previous evening. She and her father had dinner together and watched a film before both retiring to bed around 10:30. She said she had slept through the night without disturbance, waking at 7 in the morning. Typically, her father would wake her for school, but that morning, the house was unusually quiet, no sounds of the television or breakfast preparation. When she went to look for him, she encountered the terrible scene in his bedroom. As investigators continued their inspection, they found no evidence of forced entry. No locks appeared damaged, and no windows were broken. It seemed the perpetrator had entered through an unlocked door and departed through the back door, where a small amount of blood was discovered. Following standard procedure in such cases, investigators first considered those closest to the victim. They turned their attention to Lewis's ex-wife Tricia, considering whether custody issues might have been a factor. Though initially difficult to locate, Tricia voluntarily came in for questioning. It quickly became apparent that she had no involvement in the incident. Tricia was content with Lewis having primary custody given her circumstances, and she was grateful to him for his role in raising their children. By all accounts, they maintained an amicable relationship. There seemed to be no motive for her to harm him. Kaylee then mentioned that her older brother Keith had left the house several days prior. Following a disagreement with their father, Keith had been involved in an altercation at school, which had disappointed Lewis. Lewis had always been clear that once his children turned 18, there would be adult consequences for their actions, and physical confrontations at school fell into that category. Keith had temporarily moved in with a friend, though everyone understood this was a temporary arrangement. Lewis had indicated he would welcome Keith back if he acknowledged responsibility for his actions and avoided similar incidents in the future. Investigators went to Guthrie High School, where detectives escorted Keith to the principal's office to inform him of his father's passing. His reaction was unmistakably genuine, a display of raw emotion. He began shouting that they must be mistaken, becoming so distraught that he threw a chair against the wall. The timing was particularly difficult for him, as he and his father had parted on unfavorable terms. Keith was quickly cleared of any suspicion when his friends confirmed he had been with them throughout the night and hadn't been near the family home in several days. Attention then turned to Lewis's missing car. An alert was issued to be on the lookout for the vehicle, though after 8 hours, it could have traveled a considerable distance. Officers canvassed the neighborhood and spoke with those familiar with the Fryer family. Lewis apparently hadn't had any notable disagreements with colleagues or acquaintances that might explain such violence. One element investigators could rule out was robbery as a primary motive. There was no forced entry. Kaylee had been left unharmed, and despite the disarray in Lewis's bedroom, nothing apart from the car appeared to be missing. The car seemed to have been taken as a means of escape rather than for its monetary value. The investigation took an unexpected turn when two of Kaylee's friends approached the police with information they felt was relevant. They revealed that in recent years, Kaylee had become increasingly defiant, to the point where Lewis struggled to maintain parental authority. She had been drinking alcohol, using substances, hosting gatherings in her father's absence, and engaging in confrontations. She had been expelled from school multiple times and hadn't attended classes in several months. Kaylee was not somebody you wanted to mess with, one friend explained. People knew if it came down to it, she wouldn't be afraid to throw hands or get in someone's face. Another friend, Gina, mentioned that Lewis had been attempting to implement stricter rules regarding curfews and behavior. But Kaylee had been resistant to these changes. When investigators discovered Kaylee's diary in her room, they found numerous entries expressing animosity toward her father. One particularly troubling entry read, "You're dead to me." Recently, Kaylee had developed the idea that if she lived with her mother, instead, she would have more freedom to do as she pleased. Another aspect that troubled investigators was how Kaylee could have slept through such a violent incident, a physical struggle, items being broken. Potentially, her father calling for help and a car driving away. It seemed implausible. Even Keith had misgivings about the situation when Kaylee and their mother had come to collect him from school after he was informed of his father's death. He sensed something wasn't right. As soon as I saw Kaylee's face, I just knew she was lying about something, and I was immediately suspicious. He later stated, "I told her I didn't want to talk to her, and I felt physically sick." He added, "As children, my sister and I were like partners in crime and would sneak out together. But as we grew older, we grew apart, and she began to go off the rails, drinking and taking drugs. I tried to speak to her about it, but she wouldn't listen. And she definitely had mental health issues her entire life. She didn't like being told what to do, and she was a problem from an early age. We all knew she had a dark side. She was quick to fight anyone and could fly off the handle. While there had clearly been tension between father and daughter, investigators didn't believe Kaylee would have been physically capable of carrying out such an attack herself. However, they suspected she might know the identity of her father's assailant. Kaylee's friends provided investigators with another significant lead. For several months, Kaylee had been involved with a 21-year-old named Jerry Jerome Childs Jr., known as Jay. He had no permanent address, no employment, and limited financial resources. Kaylee would often allow him into their home during the night without her father's knowledge. Some sources indicated Jay was married during this time, despite his relationship with Kaylee. Despite Kaylee's efforts to keep the relationship hidden, Lewis eventually learned about Jay. He confronted Kaylee and made it abundantly clear that he disapproved of their relationship and that Jay was not welcome in their home under any circumstances. The following day, he encountered Jay walking in their neighborhood and conveyed the same message directly to him. In Oklahoma, their age difference meant their relationship violated statutory laws, a fact Lewis likely mentioned during this confrontation. This information provided investigators with a potential motive, but locating Jay proved challenging without a permanent address. Eventually, they received information regarding the missing car, which had been abandoned in Oklahoma City with some damage and the keys still inside. No significant evidence was found in the vehicle, no murder weapon or DNA material. Shortly afterward, authorities located 21-year-old Jay in Oklahoma City as well. He had contacted a friend requesting transportation, explaining he was stranded without means to return home. The friend persuaded him to remain where he was and cooperate with police for questioning. Initially, Jay denied any involvement in the incident. However, he eventually admitted to being at the Fryer residence that night after Kaylee had allowed him entry. He claimed Lewis had awakened, discovered them together, and attempted to attack him with a golf club in the hallway. Jay stated he had grabbed a knife from the kitchen in self-defense. Investigators allowed him to continue his account, knowing it contradicted the physical evidence. The bloodstain pattern indicated Lewis had been attacked in bed. His feet were positioned against the closet where his golf clubs were stored, but these appeared undisturbed with dust accumulation, suggesting they hadn't been used recently. Furthermore, there was no blood in the hallway where Jay claimed the confrontation had occurred. All blood stains were confined to the bedroom. When confronted with these inconsistencies, Jay modified his account, claiming he had gone to the home with the intention of robbery, but had panicked and stabbed Lewis when he awoke. This explanation still didn't align with the evidence. With further questioning, Jay finally admitted that Kaylee had convinced him to kill her father, and they had executed the plan together. While she hadn't been in the room during the act, she had provided specific instructions about timing and where to find the knife. Jay explained that Kaylee had asked him multiple times previously to kill her father, but he had consistently refused. That changed when the 15-year-old told Jay she was pregnant with his child. According to Billy Wheeler, the Guthrie city attorney, Kaylee's plan would have seemed reasonable to Jay, given his circumstances. This is somebody that's been kicked out of his house, and Kaylee offers him a plan. They're going to live with her mother. They're going to be happy. They're going to have a place to live. And this just offers him something he can't turn down, Wheeler explained. According to Jay's account, after Kaylee and Lewis went to bed, she unlocked the door for him. Jay entered, obtained the knife, and proceeded to Lewis's room. He hesitated momentarily, but when Lewis began to stir, Jay attacked him. After Lewis was deceased, Jay took the car and headed for Oklahoma City, discarding the knife along the way. Kaylee had told him she would meet him there. Upon reaching Oklahoma City, he abandoned the vehicle and walked to Crossroads Mall. He called Kaylee just before 7 in the morning to inform her of his location. She then contacted the police, setting their plan in motion. Less than 24 hours after Lewis Fryer was found, Jay Childs was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. Authorities then went to Trisha's residence where Kaylee was staying, and she too was arrested and subsequently charged with first-degree murder. While in custody, investigators analyzed Kaylee's phone records, which revealed she had called Jay immediately before contacting emergency services. The medical examination and Jay's statement indicated Lewis had been killed around 3 in the morning. Despite Kaylee's claim that she had been asleep, her phone activity showed she had been using the internet at that time. There were numerous calls between her and Jay, and the timeline he provided increasingly matched with the evidence. Kaylee continued to deny any involvement, requested legal representation, and entered a plea of not guilty. Her communications from jail were monitored, and during one of these conversations, it was revealed that Kaylee was not actually pregnant. This had been a fabrication to ensure Jay would follow through with killing her father and to strengthen their relationship. When Jay learned of this deception, investigators noted he appeared genuinely upset. Following this revelation, he agreed to testify against Kaylee in exchange for reduced charges. Trisha Wheeler Fryer maintained her daughter's innocence throughout the proceedings. It's awful, especially when she's innocent, no matter what anyone says. She stated, "What she's wrote me and what she's told me, I'm her mother. I mean, I could tell when she's lying. She's not. I don't think she has any involvement." Regarding Jay's testimony, Trisha was dismissive. "I firmly believe that not because I'm just her mother, is because I did meet Jay Childs, and everything I've seen him say on his hand is lies." Kaylee's attorney argued there was no forensic evidence connecting her to the scene, and that the prosecution's case relied entirely on the testimony of a self-described gang member. However, the judge found the combined testimony of Jay and an Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation agent sufficient to proceed to trial. In July 2010, Jay pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and received a life sentence with the possibility of parole. In May 2011, the now 16-year-old Kaylee Fryer went to trial maintaining her not guilty plea. Despite her age at the time of the incident, she was tried as an adult and subsequently found guilty of first-degree murder. At her sentencing hearing, Kaylee's appearance had changed noticeably. Her once blonde hair was now dark, and she avoided looking at family members in attendance. She displayed little visible emotion, wiping away a few silent tears upon hearing her sentence. Her attorney expressed concerns about the verdict. You know she misses her father very much, and she has really been as flabbergasted as anybody else over this entire case. He also questioned the appropriateness of sending a 15-year-old to an adult correctional facility. The biggest problem is that she's going to serve a very long sentence and is likely to survive it. My concern is, what kind of a person are we going to reintroduce into society? Kaylee received a life sentence with the possibility of parole. In Oklahoma, this equates to 45 years, meaning she would be 61 years old when eligible to apply for parole. Jay Childs will first be eligible for parole in 2077. If still living, he would be approximately 90 years old. The prosecution maintained that while Kaylee had orchestrated the events, Jay had made his own decisions. Regardless of his claims, he had deliberately taken another person's life. One investigator expressed astonishment that a 15-year-old could convince a 21-year-old to commit murder and persuade him it was the optimal solution to their problems. Reactions to the sentence were mixed. Some friends and family members felt Kaylee should serve her entire sentence without parole, with one friend noting, "There was a sense of relief because they are afraid of her." That may sound strange, to be afraid of a 16-year-old girl, but they know what she's capable of. Others viewed the sentence as excessive believing. Jay should have received a longer term compared to Kaylee. Tricia continues to believe in her daughter's innocence. Louis's brother Roy simply stated there were no winners in this situation, though he expressed gratitude to the jury and prosecutors for their diligence. After turning 18, Kaylee filed several appeals, all of which were denied. In 2018, she and 4 others faced charges related to a contraband conspiracy within the correctional facility. Keith continues to experience conflicting emotions about the situation. The events affected him profoundly, leading him to seek therapy and increasing his alcohol consumption as a coping mechanism. He acknowledges the significance of her young age at the time and questions whether she fully comprehended the consequences of her actions or truly believed the plan would be carried out. However, if it was indeed her plan, she could have prevented it as easily as she had initiated it. Many observers find her ability to remain inactive during such violence, pretending it wasn't occurring, indicative of a concerning emotional detachment. Keith reflects, "I'll always miss my dad, but even now, I don't know how I feel about my sister. When she calls from prison, I do speak to her because I know that's what Dad would want. I haven't visited her, but despite what she did, I still have a sense of love for her because I know Dad would never have given up on her no matter what. I like to think I could maybe forgive her because I genuinely don't think she understood the full consequences of her actions and the hurt it would cause. He concludes with a tribute to his father. I loved my dad, and I always will. I'll take his morals and convictions with me. My dad was only 5'2", but he was the only 5'2" person I'd ever look up to. My dad was, and still is, the perfect role model to me. Years have passed since that quiet Thursday morning was disrupted, yet the ripples of those events continue to affect all those connected to the Fryer family.
On a warm summer day, June 25, 1983, in the picturesque Helena National Forest of Montana, several families gathered for what should have been a pleasant afternoon picnic. The scene was tranquil, a shallow river running through the area, children playing by the water, and adults enjoying each other's company in the sunshine. Among these families were Nancy and Kim Marshall, who had brought their children, including their 4-year-old daughter, Nylene. Nylene K. Marshall, born September 18, 1978, was described by her adoptive father, Kim, as an angelic child, sweet-natured with brown hair, blue eyes, and dimples on both cheeks. She had a small mole above her left eyebrow, stood about 3 feet 2 inches tall, and weighed just 29 pounds. On this day, she wore a yellow shirt and shorts, but had taken off her shoes to play near the water. As the afternoon progressed, the children ventured down to the creek to play. Some explored a nearby abandoned cabin while Nylene and 2 older children stayed by the water, catching frogs. When the other children began returning to the picnic area, someone noticed Nylene wasn't among them. The 2 older children who had been with her explained they had walked ahead, and when they turned around, she was no longer there. At first, there was no panic, just calls of her name echoing through the trees. Adults searched near the water, assuming she had wandered a short distance away. But as time passed and there continued to be no sign of Nylene, concern began to grow. How could a barefoot 4-year-old girl, who disliked walking without shoes, simply vanish in this wilderness? As the reality of the situation became clear, someone contacted law enforcement. The peaceful day had transformed into the beginning of what would become one of Montana's most enduring mysteries. The Jefferson County Sheriff's Office responded quickly to the report of a missing child. They recognized immediately that the search area, part of the Elkhorn Mountains with its dense woodland, mine shafts, and steep rocky cliffs, would present significant challenges. To maximize their efforts, they enlisted the help of the Lewis and Clark search and rescue teams. I can actually kind of feel it right now. I just got kids of my own, recalled Ken Gardner, one of the volunteers who joined the search. He described how they conducted grid searches, with searchers lining up arm's length apart, covering vast areas methodically. As night fell on that first day, helicopters equipped with heat-sensing devices flew over the area, while ground teams continued searching with flashlights. The following morning, as dawn broke over the forest, the search expanded further. Over the days that followed, nearly 3,000 searchers, 2,800 of them volunteers, many from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, of which the Marshall family were members, combed through the wilderness. Dogs and planes were deployed alongside those searching on foot. The FBI joined the effort, and divers were sent to investigate mine shafts and bodies of water in the area. At one point, authorities even drained a pond, believing Nylene might have fallen in, but this yielded no results. Ralph Tecumseh, who was with the Lewis and Clark County Search and Rescue, later reflected, even somewhat today, that search still haunts me. I think about after day 5, with the elements and the potential of dangerous critters out on the hillside, it kind of came into our minds that we may not have a successful end to this. Despite the growing sense that they might not find Nylene alive, the searchers persisted. The weather didn't cooperate. Rain made the already challenging terrain even more difficult to navigate. Yet volunteers continued to arrive each day, ready to pick up where they had left off the previous evening. A search dog named Duke, who had successfully located 37 missing persons in the past, was brought in to help. Duke did pick up a scent, but lost it shortly afterward, adding another layer of mystery to Nylene's disappearance. After several days of intensive searching, information emerged that would change the direction of the investigation entirely. Two girls who had been playing near Nylene came forward with an account that suggested something more sinister than a child wandering off and becoming lost. The girls reported seeing a man dressed in a purple jogging suit near Nylene shortly before she disappeared. According to their account, this stranger had approached Nylene as she sat on rocks by the beaver dams. They recalled hearing Nylene say to him, "My brother can run faster than you." One girl stated she didn't recognize this man and didn't believe he was part of their picnic group. Another child mentioned seeing the man take a step closer to Nylene. A 6-year-old boy told police that Nylene had said, "That man wants me to follow the shadow." Some of the children said they had ignored the man and continued walking. Another mentioned feeling frightened and deciding to leave. According to their accounts, Nylene remained standing with the stranger, and moments later, both were gone. What made these testimonies particularly concerning to investigators was that the children had not spoken to each other after Nylene's disappearance. They weren't creating a collaborative story. Each child independently provided similar details about this mysterious figure in the purple jogging suit. With this new information, Nancy and Kim Marshall began to fear that their daughter had been abducted. To spread awareness about Nylene, they distributed thousands of missing person posters across the country. Tips and reported sightings came in from various states, but none could be substantiated. After 10 days, as snow began to fall in the mountains, the official search for Nylene Marshall was reluctantly called off. For the searchers who had dedicated so much time and effort, it was devastating. "We did everything we thought we could do, but we weren't successful," said Ralph Tecumseh. The case, however, was far from closed. The investigation entered a new phase in November 1985, more than 2 years after Nylene's disappearance. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which had been founded the previous year, received an anonymous call. The caller claimed to be Nylene's kidnapper and stated that he still had her. 2 months after this disturbing call, Child Find received an anonymous letter that appeared to be from the same individual. The letter contained detailed information about Nylene and included passages such as, "She is a sweet little girl, and it is because of how much I have grown to love her that I realize how much her family must miss her. But she is adjusted and seems happy. She trusts me and isn't afraid. We play a lot, and she laughs. Me clown around. She smiles and acts coy when I tease her. She giggles when we snuggle and hugs me sometimes for no apparent reason. I love her, and I have her. I just can't let her go." The writer claimed that Nylene was well cared for, mentioning that he had an investment income that allowed him to work from home and care for her full time. He stated that he taught her at home and took her traveling to various cities, including San Francisco, New York, Oklahoma City, New Orleans, Nashville, Chicago, and even abroad, to Puerto Rico, Canada, and Britain. According to the letter, he no longer called her Nylene, but used her middle name, Kay. He provided details about her appearance, saying her hair was now short and curly. She had grown to about 45 inches tall and weighed around 50 pounds and had several permanent teeth. The letter was postmarked from Madison, Wisconsin. During the same period, Nancy and Kim began receiving phone calls that were traced to a public phone booth in the same area. The FBI determined that the calls and letters were likely from the same individual. Special Agent Kent Miller of the Madison FBI office noted there were about 3 calls in total. They were able to identify the exact phone booth used, but after this discovery, the communications abruptly ceased. Like many other promising leads in this case, this one ultimately led nowhere, leaving the marshals and investigators with more questions than answers. In the years following Nylene's disappearance, various leads emerged, but none provided the breakthrough that her family and law enforcement hoped for. In June 1989, Nylene's uncle saw a composite sketch of a man and woman wanted for child abduction, and believed he had seen this couple among the searchers on the first day Nylene went missing. In November 1990, an episode of Unsolved Mysteries featured Nylene's case, including an age-progressed image showing what she might look like at age 12. While this didn't lead to finding Nylene, it did result in solving another case. A viewer recognized one of his classmates as Monica Bonilla, who had been abducted by her non-custodial father 8 years earlier. August 1991 brought a disturbing development when Richard James Wilson, a 42-year-old man on probation for sexual assault of a minor, claimed to have killed both a woman from Great Falls and Nylene Marshall. Police took Wilson to the Elkhorn Mountains to show them where he had allegedly left Nylene, but he couldn't identify the specific mine shaft he had mentioned. Searches of the area yielded nothing. Wilson, who had a history of mental illness, later recanted his confession. Jefferson County Sheriff Tom Dorn advised taking Wilson's claims with a grain of salt due to his constantly changing story, and he was eventually released due to lack of evidence. In 1995, the Marshall family faced another tragedy. Nancy, who had flown to Mexico to look at houses as the family planned to relocate, was found dead in her hotel room in Mexico City. The door had been kicked in, and she was found hanging with her hands tied behind her back. She had been beaten, and her wedding ring was missing. Although her death was officially ruled a suicide, Kim was convinced she had been murdered. He hired a private investigator, but was advised by the State Department not to push for a murder inquiry, as this might delay the release of her body. Wanting to bring Nancy home for burial, Kim reluctantly accepted the ruling, and she was laid to rest in Texas. Another potential lead emerged in 1998 when Unsolved Mysteries rebroadcast Nylene's case. A nurse from New Orleans contacted authorities, recalling an incident from years earlier when a woman calling herself Helena had come to the hospital to have a baby. The woman and her male companion had seemed uncomfortable answering questions about their identities and medical history and had left before receiving treatment. The woman was located and said she couldn't remember much about her upbringing, but thought her mother's name might have been Nylene. Blood tests were conducted to compare with Nylene's biological father, but this lead also proved to be a dead end. Over the decades, the case of Nylene Marshall has remained open. Age-progressed images have been released periodically, showing what she might have looked like at ages 25, 33, and 43. Despite these efforts and countless hours of investigation, no trace of Nylene, not even the clothes she was wearing, has ever been found. "My gut tells me she's deceased," said one investigator from the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office. But without evidence, the case cannot be closed. Derek Van Lucien, who worked on the case with the Montana Division of Criminal Investigations, observed, "She's out there and not been found, and it's something that nobody has answers to." The case has become a topic of interest for internet sleuths on various websites and forums. According to Sheriff Doolittle, I probably would say somewhere around 2 inquiries a month if somebody has seen something, or somebody has heard something, or somebody has a question, or somebody will send something to the Center for Missing and Exploited Children. It's always out there. For those who participated in the original searches, theories about what happened to Nylene vary widely. Ralph Duncan believes she was abducted and sold, and will probably never know her real identity, while Ken Gardner thinks she may still be alive. Nylene is listed on the Missing Persons Clearinghouse website, a real-time database compiled with information from the FBI. Jennifer Viets of the Montana Department of Justice explained, "Clearinghouses are a network basically between states, so if we have a case that crosses state lines, we can contact the clearinghouse manager in another state, and we work together to try and locate the missing people." In 2018, the Find Nylene Marshall Facebook page reported that handwritten letters had been sent to businesses in Janesville, Indiana, Foote, and Edgerton, Wisconsin, relating to Nylene. The letters were postmarked from Cincinnati, Ohio, with no return address, and were being investigated by law enforcement. For Nylene's family, the absence of answers has been unbearable. Her older brother, who was 6 when she disappeared, told Nancy that his heart wanted to cry. "I really miss Nylene," he said. "I really love her, and I want to play with her." Do you think we'll ever find her? Nylene's younger sister, not quite 2 years old when Nylene vanished, had trouble eating and sleeping afterward, and no longer wanted to play with the dolls she had once enjoyed sharing with her sister. It has now been over 40 years since Nylene Marshall disappeared from the Helena National Forest. Law enforcement has returned to the scene numerous times over the years, but no evidence has ever been found. The case remains classified as a non-family abduction. As Detective Hughes reflected, the only thing that we can hope is that with the passage of time, anyone who knows anything might come forward and bring some much-needed closure to this case.